losing money or stopping people from, I don't know, other things that don't matter as much. But at the same time, safety ideas have historically been borrowed by security. So how many people here have heard of like Swiss cheese like defense theory or defense in depth or root cause analysis or anything like that? Those are mostly things that came from security or from safety and from accident investigation. So planes crashing, boats crashing, and things like that. The first safety theory was the domino theory, which started with racism and ended with injury. This is mainly for people working in plants where you had a lot of workers on the floor, and if someone made some mistake, you would blame that person. And since they were dead or mangled anyway, you didn't care. But where that went from there was root cause analysis, which you can sort of see the parallels between root cause and domino theory. Fault tree analysis, which is a very complex, like if this happens, what happens? If this happens, what happens? And things like the Swiss cheese model. But what I want to focus on today is a sort of theoretical work by this MIT professor, Nancy Leveson, who wrote this book, Engineering a Safer World, that sort of collates her life's work. She started out as a computer scientist and then became an accident investigator. And she worked on things like both space shuttle disasters and other things like that. So it starts with systems thinking, and systems thinking has been around since these guys. That's Bertalanffy, who developed systems theory for bio, and Wiener, who came up with the term cybernetics, which we're all very happy about. That thing that's in front of them is actually a bot. It's a bot that follows a flashlight around, like a moth. And in 1950, that was pretty advanced. So safety defined by Nancy Leveson is about sort of these three things interacting, which is hazards, which are things that could happen, like a blackout or a flat tire, an accident, which results in an unacceptable level of loss for whatever your definition is, whether it's losing a life or losing 50 bucks. And then safety is freedom from those things. And what her one of her central tenets is this, that accidents today happen even though all the pieces of the system are still working properly. And I don't know if that makes any sense or not to you guys, or folks, excuse me. But back in the day, if you had an axle and the axle broke, your car broke. That was the end of the day. But now, let's say you have rack and pinion steering. Same thing. If the shaft between your steering wheel and the pinion system, if that snapped, you're done. Today, what do you have between your steering wheel and your front wheels? Does anybody even know? Wires, right? And probably other controllers, I mean, there are multiple controllers that could turn your wheels. And if something goes haywire, it's not because something snapped. Maybe it's because something is, locked in an interrupt or something, but there's not things are broken necessarily. It's things are still working, but they somehow push something beyond their limits. So she calls those component interaction accidents. And here's a quote, which I'll read. Preventing future accidents requires shifting from a focus on preventing failure to the broader goal of designing and implementing controls that will enforce the necessary constraints. So here's what it doesn't do. It doesn't use risk percentages of any kind. It's just what I said before. It's unacceptable loss or deal with it. There's no in between. So that may not be useful for you if you're trying to talk to an insurance agent or talk to a budget director. But if you're trying to talk between mission failure and mission success, that's what this deals with. It doesn't look at all the possible failures because failures aren't the cause of accidents. Hazards are the causes of accidents. It never blames the operator because that's a whole other thing we can talk about offline if you want, but operator error basically doesn't exist in her model. And it doesn't triage. It doesn't say fix this first, fix this second, fix this third. So I'm going to run through how you do this STPA, because it's actually relatively simple. The book is also free online. You can get it from MIT Press. It's called Engineering a Safer World. If you like accident investigations, it's got some really good ones. Everything from water supply accidents to Bhopal to all the greats. Sorry, a little gallows humor. So the first thing you need to define is your system purpose. What does your system do? I think that may be a stopping point for a lot of people. If you, I don't want to rag on my company, but if you'd talked to us about 3 years ago, I don't know if we would have had an answer to that question. And I think now we do. But this is a really important place to start. Like what does your system do? Now define your losses. What can't you accept? So maybe you can accept all loss, right? Like, I think that's actually where this fits in with security really well, is like, well, okay, Amazon was down for 15 minutes. We lost, I don't know, $90 million. Okay. Like, it all depends on what your level is. You just have to draw that cut line and go with it. And if you actually deal with people getting hurt, then make that your line, please. And then hazards. What could make you suffer a loss? In our case, that could be threats, like people actually actively trying to steal your data, people trying to harm you or bring down your system and make you lose that unacceptable amount of money. Or just someone kicking out the power from, I don't know, your system. So I urge you to also check out Dr. William Young's work. He has worked explicitly on applying this to safety to security for the Air Force. They tend to deal with people lobbing explosives at them. So their value system might be a little bit different than if you're just running a .com. And then finally, once you've defined the hazards and the losses and your mission and all these other things, how can we stop these hazards from becoming losses? And you design these constraints, and there's a very thorough way of doing this. It goes back to this system model here of a control action and feedback, a controller and a controlled process. The issue is, once again, a lot of data-oriented companies don't have a controlled process, except in as much as they're dealing maybe with PII, like personally identifiable information. So you're saying, well, I can't lose this. I can't lose this credit card number. I can't lose this person's middle name, their mother's maiden name. I need to hold on to that data. Some folks at MITRE have actually worked on applying this to privacy. And it requires sort of just changing the words, but it doesn't actually change the results. And yeah, it really is just boxes and arrows. This is not magic. This is not like there's no equations really. You're just drawing boxes and arrows and then looking at them and saying, how could this arrow F up? How could this box screw up? And like, if we zoom in on that very top arrow, like, this is extremely high level. I think a lot of this, just this first one is the life's work of many, exploit and secure LangSec folk. Like, it's just that, because it is a really, really, really important thing. But if you draw your constraints in such a way that you can't accept UTF-8, well, then just block it. You never have to, just don't deal with it anymore. I mean, anyway. So I think this is a useful system, at least to familiarize yourself with and then say, I don't have time to do it. But part of the thing is, well, it's so hard, right? Like, I don't want to draw boxes around everything in my system. I've got, 7 different servers out there with 5 different versions of Windows running on them. I don't know what their patch levels are. I don't know how they're connected. Well, the beautiful thing is, if you can draw a box around 7 of those systems and say there's no information in them that I care about losing or getting destroyed or anything, you now don't have to worry about them. You can just wipe them off the map. You need to worry about them for operations, but you don't need to worry about them because you've actually pushed them out of the danger zone, so to speak. So with that, are there any questions on safety? Because I'm about to go to the bot demo. Any safety questions? And I was going to say the one thing that I heard Nancy Levinson say in a recent talk, which was that software can't cause an accident. And that's actually true. I honestly believe that, because software running on a processor disconnected from the world really can't cause an accident. You could maybe at worst burn up the CPU, maybe, but that probably requires a fan failure, right? So software itself doesn't do anything. It's that it's connected. It's that screen that it's connected to is being looked at by the wrong person. It's that the printer is, the wrong printer, or the network connection is wrong. But software itself is actually not that dangerous, and especially if you're only talking about like physical disasters, right? Anyway, I thought that at least somebody laughed. So this is Safety Bot. So what if we had a bot to help us with this process? And what if you only had 2 weeks to write such a bot, which is the situation I found myself in? You go back to your types of bots and you say, I'm going to stick with the easy side, right? I'm not going to build a new, AI to help me. And then the next thing you're going to do is pick your programming language and choose a language you've never ever used that most people haven't heard of, because why not? No, it's because I had great people like Chris and Hez to help me out with it. Now I'm going to show you the architecture, because I was told people don't like to see source code. I drew this. What this does, the safety bot is just a chunk of code, like it's a script that compiles down and runs. There's no outside dependencies, really. And it just asks you questions and sort of runs you through this safety process, at least the first couple steps of it. There's a context manager, which just says, like, oh, you're in this context, you're going to say this. You're over here in this context, you're going to say this. And it passes you through those. And hopefully it outputs a pretty picture. So now I don't believe in demo gods, so we're just going to do this. Ugh. By not being a believer. Dude, that could use it. When is that legible still? Okay. You'll like pretend it is. It's supposed to be used. Okay. So the bot here, I'm just going to run it. Dope. Bot